Hi everyone. In this audio I'm going to talk about releasing obsession with past love. The reason I'm talking about this is we are in a very intense Venus and Scorpio retrograde, and a lot of people that I talk to have been going through a deep process with letting go of past hurt, places where we have felt wounded and even crippled. Because Scorpio is about transformation and it's about deep healing. And I'm going to be using some images for this little podcast of Hades and Persephone. And that is the myth of Persephone being captured and taken by Hades down into the underworld. And right now we're in a phase until the end of October where Venus has gone, so to speak, underground. We call this invisible or not being able to see her. And this is a very deep transit. This is a time where a purification is occurring for each of us inside of our love natures. And keeping in mind that, of course, this has to do with loving ourselves, loving others, how we are loved, how we can sort of live life through the lens of love. So one thing that's coming up for a lot of people right now is a review of the past, because that's what retrogrades do. And it has to do with really going underground into these darker places. So I'm going to show you some images of Hades and Persephone where he steals her and takes her underground. And she's reluctant. You know, this is a kidnapping. And a lot of us right now are not going to feel like this is a willing thing and have thoughts coming up almost like in an obsessive cycle where it's hard to let go of this thinking that's about past time relationships. Now, why do we do this? And how can we let obsessions go? One of the reasons that we obsess about things that didn't work out in the past or things that we've been through. You can even have a positive obsession. I have here, I'm going to use some tarot cards to sort of illustrate this podcast. You know, the Six of Cups is the memories, the fond memories of a time that's passed that you can no longer have. Maybe the person has left your life, but you loved them and they were so special to you. Maybe you can never get them back, like they've left their body. And so we have this sensation right now of being compelled to really go into what makes us tick and to solve issues that come from the past in our relationships. But this isn't all warm and fuzzy because Scorpio is a Mars-ruled sign. Mars is the god of war. And so Venus being retrograde here may feel like we are at war with some ideas that we have. We're at war, we're tussling with, we're struggling with some ideas, we're reworking, we're going over memories, trying to understand a past time situation, and it's not comfortable. It feels like we're at war. A part of us wants to be present and wants to be moving forward, but this energy is pulling us inward, it's pulling us underground, it's pulling us into our deepest fears, our memories, our fears of abandonment. It is abducting us. This energy is requiring us to go to a place that we may not want to go. And so one of the reasons that we obsess about past situations or current situations, but I'm going to use past time since we're in a retrograde, is we are searching for something that was missing. So you'll replay what happened between you and other people over and over again. And go over the conversations, go over the events. And even though things are over, you may wonder why. What happened there? What's missing? And I've noticed that this happens with people over and over again, that we'll get into these cycles where we can't accept the answers. We can't accept the facts. And that's in this transit because what we want is the emotional gratification, the sense of closure, the sense of deeply understanding at the emotional level, not just the mental level, what we've been through and why it happened. Now, some of the relationships that we've been through in our lives are karmic. And I don't define karma as punishment. I don't really like that way of looking at karma. To me, karma is a pocket of intensity, something that we feel intensely about. It's like a little geyser underneath the surface of the land, or it's like a little hot pool. It's hot. It's a hot area. It's not neutral. It's not cool. It's not a casual space for us. And one of the reasons for this is that we may have some unfinished business there. But I don't take a judgmental approach to this, and I'll do a longer video on karma soon. It's really that we are just trying to understand our own consciousness within whatever dynamic we were in. And often my clients will say to me, I just keep going over this over and over and over again, which again is obsession. And I just don't feel satisfied with the answers that I have. And one thing that we are looking for is not an answer, but we're looking for consciousness. So sometimes what's been bothering us in a past karmic tie, something that's hot, that's intense, that we can't get away from, that keeps, eating away at us, eats away at our insides, makes us mad, makes us sad, is there was a lack of consciousness at the time. And we all know that hindsight is 20/20. Often when you review how the past went, you can see, from my consciousness today, I would never behave that way that I behaved 20 years ago. And so we'll have regret come up and feel like, I could have done better. But if you could have done better, you would have. Everyone does the best they can given the consciousness that they are. But sometimes the answer that we're looking for, especially with regard to another person, is a missing piece around their consciousness. This often happens when you are projecting that the other person you're involved with has the same level or type of consciousness that you do. And this is one of the things I see more in relationships that can be the most confusing for people is, why is that person like that? Why did that bother them? Why did this not work? And it's because the other person has an actual different frequency that they're on. It's like if you were tuning radio stations, there's a clash there. They are not on the same station as you. And so no matter how many times you go over and over the tape of what happened and what went wrong and why it turned out the way it was, that what you're really looking for is the gap between your consciousnesses. You're looking at understanding, and this is the hardest thing, is understanding how that person's consciousness is so different from yours, that is why they made the choice they made. And so it's really about being able to step into that other person's shoes and seeing how many degrees of separation there really are between you two, or always were. And usually you know this when you first start up with someone. You know kind of what the levels of compatibility are. You kind of know if you share a world with them. And sometimes the worlds we share in relationships are kind of like two circles with some colored in areas between the two where the two circles overlap. Sometimes you have an overlap and then you have two other worlds on the other sides. So missing the difference in consciousness and realizing that the other person was not as conscious as you were at that moment. And that's why it's for you replaying a hurt, but for the other person, they're not even thinking of you. Or vice versa. And that brings me to the second thing about karmic situations and obsessive things. There is a prayer out there, the Hawaiian prayer of forgiveness, which is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And this is a very helpful prayer for the next piece about this, about obsession, is sometimes you've done everything that you can in a certain situation. Mistakes have been made. There's nothing you can do. The other person has disappeared, or died even, or trust broken, or something has happened that has hurt hearts in the situation. And also, your consciousnesses do not match, and you two can't find your way together. You can't, like, if I put you in a room together, you wouldn't be able to talk it out because you wouldn't understand each other's viewpoints well enough. You're too entrenched in your own viewpoints, and your consciousness doesn't come together there. And in that case, I feel like a prayer like this forgiveness prayer, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, is very helpful, especially when that person's not present, you can't find them in the world, or you don't want to talk to them. And the other technique that I use for this is called Third Universe, where you can create a space for the two of you to talk at a higher level that goes beyond the ego. So acknowledging that the energy is not something that you can solve from your current viewpoint and consciousness. It's too complicated. And so this is a way of releasing it to the higher forces so that you can release that obsession. And the third thing that I want to say about obsession is that often the thing that we're trying to figure out about the past is it's a he said, she said, or a she said, she said, or a he said, meaning that there is something that you feel right about that you feel the other person is wrong about, and you just know you're right. And in this case, the obsession goes around in circles because you want that person to agree with you, and you want to be right about this, and you want that validation for your point of view about whether the person did a really shitty thing to you or whether you did a really shitty thing to someone else, and you won't let yourself off the hook. But primarily this is about being obsessed with a past love and feeling like you're stuck, feeling like you are not able to move, you have no movement, no ability to, get out of it and move it out of your space so that you have space to focus on new things and things that are really working for you in present time. And the technique that I like to use for this is everywhere I've been that or done that, I destroy and uncreate the charge. What you're doing here, and this is one of the hardest things to see, especially in situations where you were in an abusive dynamic, where the other person was being abusive toward you, and you were going back for more, or you couldn't find your way out of the situation, but you were somehow a participant. And the more victimized you feel by that abuse, the harder this can be to do. But I still encourage you to try this because it will help to set you free. And this comes from the idea that somewhere in your life, no matter how small, no matter where it is, because I work in the realms of the soul, I look at other time frames as well. So it may be a past life where you were like this person. And this is where the karmic element comes in, where we're trying to understand and have awareness. It's the self-seeking awareness. That's all karma is. To clear it is awareness. We need the awareness to understand, why was I a participant in that? What was really going on? What was my part in it? And how did I weave that together in that situation? And so what we would do here is just say, everywhere I've been that energy or done that energy, whatever that is, that thing that you judge in the other person, where they should have been kinder, they should have been more generous, they should have been more loving, and the things you can't let them off the hook for are going to be the things that you on a soul level are having trouble letting yourself off the hook for. So everywhere I've been that energy that I'm judging or done that thing that I'm judging, I destroy and uncreate the charge on that. There are a few cards that come up that I wanted to use to illustrate this. We have the Eight of Swords being one of these trapped, obsessive spaces. And, I have several images of the Eight of Swords here. I like this one that's really kind of coy, where her stance is so coy. She has a hip turned out to the right, and she's just sort of like a damsel in distress. It's very dramatic, and there's a castle in the background, and she's wearing this pretty dress, and it's very sort of coquettish to me, where it looks like she's almost participating in allowing herself to be bound, allowing herself to be stuck there. It almost looks like an art piece, or like she's posing, like she's a statue and playing that card. This other Eight of Swords card I like because here she is. She's looking a little stubborn because she has her back turned to the opening between the swords. there's an opening there. She doesn't want to come through. She's got her arms folded in front of her, and she's wearing this gorgeous satin dress that's red. So thinking again of the Scorpio retrograde, it's like pain. She's wearing her pain red dress, and she's got a stubborn look on her face, and you get the sense that she could really wriggle out of her satin bindings and look at the sky and look at the path and walk clear away out of these swords, but she just doesn't want to do it right now. So sometimes we're just not ready to be freed. Sometimes we just don't want to be free of an obsession. We want to stay in it. And here is, of course, another one of the traditional images where, she is lined by these swords, but they're not actually blocking her. Her feet are free, as the other women, their feet are free. And she's just standing there with one shoulder kind of up, like a damsel in distress, and her mouth is turned downward. And behind her, the sky is breaking open to give her some light to see that she has the capacity to move out of this trapped state of being. So I'm just choosing a few cards that to me speak to this energy that we're in the retrograde and with obsession. The Eight of Swords usually comes up. Sometimes we just feel stuck, and we're stuck in a victim space where we feel like, I have no choice. I'm just stuck here, and I've been bound, and I can't, I have no skills, I have no resources, there's no knife to cut me free, there's nobody to help me. And that's not true, because everything in our lives is a co-creative creation. Now, I also have some images of the Nine of Swords, because obsession can bring up a lot of pain. It can bring up when you're just on one side of what went wrong in a relationship. You can have sleepless nights and feel like there's just something very wrong with you, like you just did something wrong, or you're doing something wrong, or you just are wrong. And instead of judging your position in the situation and being in this place of deep, deep misery and pain and torment, really. A lot of this comes from, when you're in a situation and the consciousness isn't there with you and the other person to sort it out. There's a part of you feeling hopeless that if the other person can't sort it out, then neither can you. And this kind of relates to the Eight of Swords, that this is a time to step out of that misery and that darkness that you're in and recognize that you have some new resources. I also have the Justice card, and Justice is holding the sword of truth and also the scales, and understanding that in any dynamic we've ever been involved in, we are a participant, and we get to experience both sides of whatever the dance is that we're in. And there's no judgment, but there is justice. There is a judgment card, but I'm not bringing that into this particular series right now, because I just wanted to deal with the Justice card that has to do with sometimes we will go through an experience that we just feel like, we just don't have the ability to understand. Why did that happen? Why would something like that happen? And it turns into an obsession. And that is the perfect opportunity to release it upward to the higher forces of the universe, to bless it and release it completely, and to allow it to be purified. And I say that because as Venus rolls through the underground right now, at the deepest level, this is a very intense transit for a lot of folks. There's nothing deeper than Scorpio. And it really is saying, let's let this die. Let's let this go completely. And your ego has to just be able to release it up to the forces of the universe that are more conscious and can help you resolve that at a higher level, so that you don't have to lie awake at night and obsess and continue to feel upset about it. Yes, the devil, of course, is the card of obsession. And I have several images of the devil that I just wanted to show. This is the devil from the Thoth deck, and you can see the goat horns, sign of Capricorn. You can see the worlds of entrapment below. You can see how we just get trapped in our wish for things to materialize a certain way, and feeling trapped by things like for example, an obsession that I think of as the devil in relationships is I just am not attractive enough, or there's something wrong with me at that level. Everything hinges on my physical nature, my physical body, my viability physically, or whatever. Another image of the devil that I like is this one, where the two people they're feeling naked and scared and vulnerable and chained and blocked, and they're in a tunnel, and one of them can see that there's green, there's freedom at the end of the tunnel, but you have to turn toward it and you have to be willing to see it. So just to recap, this is a time when obsessions can be highlighted, when you will be going back over deeply into your emotional and love history and really looking at the dynamics, particularly in sexual relationships, but it can be many kinds of relationships that are very core to who you are and core to your self-esteem. Again, Venus retrograde affects our feelings of self-esteem. We're going back in to try to figure out what went wrong in different parts of our lives and how we can feel good again. And it takes us into the underworld, and it takes us into these situations where we can become preoccupied or even obsessed. And the obsession is based on understanding that some relationships are karmic and just have to be experienced, partly to understand what our part in it is, and we release the judgment on being either side of that role or that relationship dynamic. Sometimes it's based on a lack of consciousness, and you are going back in time trying to find the missing piece, which is missing consciousness, either yours or the other person's, something you weren't aware of, something they weren't aware of, and you just bungled it, and forgiving that. And also, every retrograde and every obsession is a choice between staying stuck and releasing yourself, releasing the situation to the higher forces, and allowing yourself to not sit and twist with something and let it twist you up inside, because you have a choice about that and you are a creator in your life. And relationships in particular are a wonderful way to discover who you really are. You get to play with all these different energies. Sometimes you can be a certain kind of person with one person, and that changes with another person. And that's the magic of relationships, and it's the magic of the Venus retrograde. So I hope that this was helpful and interesting for you. I'd love it if you left a comment below. Please subscribe to my channel. If you would like some more personalized one-on-one help, you can contact me through the link below, and I do have a special about this very intense Venus retrograde affecting all of us. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, just check out the link. Feel free to share this video, and I will talk with you soon.